cannot do your calling. You cannot create your calling. You cannot become your calling, so to speak, right? So anything that's got anything to do with linearity, anything that's not here right now, basically, is going to be an extension, an expression, a means, an avenue for that calling to crystallize itself into this world. And that's beautiful. But the vehicle changes. You don't always drive the same car. Sometimes your car's not available, or you need to upgrade. So don't get attached to the car. You want to be able to get to where you want to get to. You want to be able to transport your body. It's not about the vehicle. So if you can maintain that awareness, then it's easy for you to quit your job, or take on a new job, or create a new business, or change the business around, or redesign it from the ground up, or fire a couple people, hire another couple people, or whatever is required for that change. Because your fulfillment comes from the clarity with which you've learned to recognize the truth of what you are, and you've seen that it's independent, it exists independent from anything that you could ever do or create or manifest. Now, the more you start manifesting and seeing the distinction between your calling and your manifestation of the calling, which is beautiful. There's no separation there, but the calling supersedes. The calling is far superior to any one of its manifestations. It can be housed in all kinds of different bodies, right? And that is what's happening. The calling actually is universal. It just has different flavors depending on the blueprint of that individual lifetime. And so it's housed, the one calling, if you will, is already housed in an infinite amount of bodies. And so the same goes on a smaller micro scale, is you are able to house your calling, your portion of that calling, into all kinds of different avenues and vehicles. So keep that flexibility. Always recognize that ultimately no circumstance, that you are not dependent on any circumstance. Since we understand the power of environment upon the unconscious mind of every human being on this world, now that we're aware of that, it is our responsibility to also alter the environment as one of the means in which we get to inspire humanity. So those prototypes are excellent examples of what works, what doesn't work, optimize it, and bring that out into humanity until every city is designed that way, right? Until every social structure is designed that way, so that everyone that gets born into the civilization is naturally focused on what is possible. To actually get that momentum going and get into the habit and gain some experience with what it's like to look at something in your life and either eliminate it, upgrade it, or replace it with a design that better suits the expression of your calling. Use a physical example, like actually physically go through your house and just look at each object, like in your house, every single little object. Say, does this make any sense? Like, is this, what's the intention behind this? Make everything intentional. And this will give you a little bit of a tangible practice, but then you can move on to, some of your relationships, or some of the dialogues in your relationships, or whatever business or career you're working on. So, but sometimes I think it's helpful for people to start with something really tangible. Just look at an object, because the process is the same. You're comparing it to your calling, if you will. You're just holding it in contrast to the light of what lights you up, and you see, does it make sense for this to be in my house or not? And then you start getting these little intuitive psychic glimpses of the past, like when you bought it, where you bought it, why you bought it, who you were when you bought it, what the intention behind it was, what the unconsciousness behind it was. And then you can sort of start clearing out your house in that way. And then you can extend that into the more abstract or non-physical elements of your life, if you will. It doesn't matter that at a certain age or in a certain stage or phase of your life, you may not suddenly feel like, oh, actually, what feels conducive is for me to settle down for 6 months, stay in one location and not travel, or move to this apartment and just stay there for a long period of time, or be in a single relationship for a long period of time. So you may have a phase where that feels to be a more conducive environment for your calling, but it's not the same as an attachment. You're still intuitively generating that, and it's still from a state of flexibility. And if the next day it turns out to not be the case, you're not in a funk about it, because your calling is not identified with the means you have chosen to express yourself. You'll always keep that quote-unquote separation between what you really are / your calling and your circumstances. Always see how independent your state of being is. You don't need anything. If there's a confusion regarding, okay, how I'm going to monetize my calling, then either you haven't really found your calling yet, or you're just not really that connected to it right now, because if you are connected to it, you don't care where you live next month. And so you don't care about how you'll get the money to live there next month, because you have no clue what next month is going to be like.